Yeah, that's fine. Looks like our countdown has started, and there goes Parisian and everyone. So welcome to Link to the Past No Major Glitches Tournament. Right now we'll just kind of get rid of some text, and then we'll be on our merry way through our journey through Hyrule.
And quite a journey it's going to be. Most of you may know, we have to get through the first section of this game, which is Escape. We got to go down into the depths of Hyrule Castle, and we have to rescue the Princess Zelda and save her and bring her to the Sanctuary, where we will be able to progress on with the game. You're going to be seeing a lot of movement tech here, pumping, as well as utilizing the boomerang in strategic places in order to bring keys and items closer to Link, so that way you don't have to move farther away from your goal.
That's right, but first we need to talk to our uncle. He tried to do some things, but we got a little bit tired, so he just decided to give Link a sword and a shield, and now we're the hero. So going through Hyrule Castle, there's not a whole lot of RNG as far as anything that's going to affect anything major. It just affects a little bit of how you need to move through a room to avoid getting hit and avoid extra slashes if you can.
Yeah, I'd say it's safe to assume that we're going to see 4 sub-6 escapes coming from these runners. They are all high caliber runners, and within the leaderboards, they're within minutes of each other, like anywhere from about 1 to 1.5 minutes of difference. A little bit of trouble from the blue guard on Parisian's screen, but had to wait a little bit to make sure that he didn't leave the key in that room. That's actually been something that happens very rarely, depending on how far you are away from that door when you boom it.
Yeah, and it's particularly heartbreaking. Transitions were a bit slow, so we like to minimize that. Okay, we got 8 slash guards from DRock, Muttski, and Emma, and Parisian goes for the 1 pot and 4 slashes. Very little difference between the two. The 1 pot is a lot more consistent. Basically, if you miss a slash or tink when the slash is, you basically lose the time saved from doing 8 slash.
So 2 of our runners are now out of the basement, moving their way to the secret passageway behind the throne room. They're going to be going through the sewers. There's going to be a lot of different RNGs we're going to see along the way with the Ropas and with the key rat that we're going to be hoping is beneficial for our runners. But obviously there can be some bad Ropa walls, and there can be some top left rat key RNG. Got some sync from Muttski and emetatron here, as well as Parisian and DRock.
Muttski with a little bit of a hug, but otherwise pretty good RNG for all runners.
Yeah, DRock got a little bit bad movement in there, but managed to skate through there. Muttski with the top left RNG. It looks like Emma was the only one that actually got really good rat RNG in that room.
Emma needs to be a little bit careful. But thankfully, she's going to be grabbing the safety that I expect all 4 runners to be grabbing. The Sanctuary Heart right here. Gotta get rid of a little bit of text first, but this is the only heart container that does give us a full refill, and it's the fastest safety that we grab in the run. Of course, it gives us 1 heart container, but that 1 heart container gives us that extra hit of safety, and then especially once we get to the parts where the damage is higher, that's going to let us offset damage just enough so we don't die.
Yeah, none of our runners here are going to be grabbing powder, any additional mails, half magic, and they're not going to be picking up any gold sword or silver arrows. These are some of the best runners that we got lined up for you here.
Alright, all 4 runners are making the way over to the first Light World dungeon of the game, Eastern Palace. Basically the only thing that we have access to right now, so the only choice we can make without glitches. We definitely like the prize that comes at the end, the green pendant. It lets us stop walking everywhere.
I really like the boomerang tech for Parisian picking up that blue rupee that dropped from the Octarock.
Yeah,
Emma's coming in here with like low rupees, so hopefully there's gonna be some popo drops for her in her favor.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about more of those rupee drops in a little bit, but it's part of the rupee route as soon as we finish the Light World. Right now, it's just a little bit of minor movement optimizations throughout this dungeon. In the room that Emma's just walked into. There's supposed to be 4 Stalfos in here, but if we walk in such a way, we avoid some of the triggers, so we just have to kill 2 skeleton Stalfos when they're off the screen, and then the door just opens for us.
Looks like all of our runners are going to grab that safety pot of 5 arrows there. It's better to grab those instead of risking hopefully a good drop in your favor from the Igors. Ooh, Emma getting a red rupee drop there in her way. That's going to be really good for her. $25 is really nice to be set up with after leaving Hera. It ensures that you only really need to pick up 1 of the blue rupees from the first tree drop. Oh, a little bit of trouble here from the damage boost into the anti-fairies there. What our runners were hoping to do was take a little hit from the popo, and then while you're still in the iframes, pick up the pot, and then move yourself into the position where the switch is, where when you come out of iframes, you'll hit the button, and then hopefully get damage boosted up towards the big key chest.
Am I keeping track of where all the safety hearts are? Basically everything, the more dangerous things can kill her in one hit. The things that are more likely to hit her, so better to take that few seconds of safety than lose about a minute being sent back to the beginning of the dungeon. And then we're entering the armor spot on offer runners soon. We need 3 arrows per armor night, and we're trying to get the last 2 to die in pretty close succession so we can skip the enrage phase of the final armors. And if that happens, any damage you have done previously gets reset, and then it'll just cost an extra 3 arrows so you finish off the fight.
Muttski having a little bit of trouble in there, but managed to get through there really nicely. Emma had a really nice clean-cut fight. DRock is the first one out of this dungeon, so he's going to be taking the lead across the entire race, but staying ahead of his opponent, Muttski. So as soon as we get ourselves these Pegasus boots, we're going to see probably one of the most used minor glitches in this game, which is spin speed. Releasing a sword spin and hitting the dash button A a frame after releasing it will get you into spin speed, which allows you to move at the same speed as boots as you're dashing, but you can change any direction.
Yep, and then one minor effect that has as well when you're in this glitch state, the spin speed state, if you touch a ledge, you just instantly hop off like you saw on DRock's side. Most of the places that we use it isn't too big of an issue, but there is a couple optional places that if you have the state active and you accidentally touch a ledge, you lose a bit of time.
Yeah, most commonly you might see this in Death Mountain. If you try to exit the top big staircase and then end up holding it down a little bit too long, you'll just go right hopping down that big staircase and have to go right back up it. Some of our runners may choose to use the spin speed after leaving the first half of Desert, although I don't think that we'll really be seeing that from anybody, but that one is also a really commonplace and really easy to accidentally jump off. The last important thing to take note of while you are in spin speed is you cannot slash your sword. You can regain the use of your sword by hitting A once again, but for the most of the time, it's really not going to be that big of a deal. You can still use items, your Y items, so utilizing like hook shots once we get that to knock dead rocks out of the way and still maintaining your spin speed can be something that we see from these runners.
Yep, and then while we have a quick opportunity, so let's go ahead and talk about just maximizing dashes though. So whenever you don't have access to these stairs, you're just stuck with having that little charge up animation and dashing. So what we try to do is we try to take as long of a straight line as possible with the boots. I mean, you can't go any other direction, but we try to have the right start position so you make the most use out of going 4 pixels a frame rather than going roughly pixel and a half a frame. So it's quite a difference, and any frame that you spend walking when you could have been dashing is a bit of a loss. That adds up a lot.
So what we have here for our runners is Desert Palace. The dungeon itself is not too difficult. We're going to be getting the Power Glove here. It's very useful in order for us to progress through the game up until we get that upgrade in Thieves Town, which is the Titans-Smith. More importantly, though, this dungeon has probably one of the most RNG infuriating bosses, which is the Land Mollusk. So this is a dungeon where our runners will also be looking at their rupee count. Emma's looking really nice here. Muttski's got more than enough of what he needs for the rupee route. DRock's actually sitting pretty nicely, and as well as Parisian player, but they might choose to pick up the 5 rupee drop coming up here in the room just south of the big chest room. Now you're seeing our runners pick up a lot of pots. The pots that we're picking up are very strategic. They either have items such as bombs, arrows, rupees underneath it, or they have something that opens up a door like a switch plate. These are all chosen specifically for the route, and there's a couple of optional ones that we may learn about. You know, in the case of what we saw Emma using in Eastern Palace, where that additional small heart was located.
Yeah, but then something to note about this entire run is like bombs and arrows are extremely tight in this run. Muttski had to pick up a few extra. We'll probably see him pick up another one right before the boss fight, and probably Emma as well. But everything is basically routed to. We basically get everything we need right before we need it to. Alright, so Land Mola. The starting positions for all 3 Land Mola are always the same, and then after that, everything is completely random. How far they jump, how much time, and then what direction they jump, and then after that, even what spots they jump in. The goal is you want to stay somewhat as close as you feel comfortable, so you can try to shoot as many arrows as possible in a shorter time. Since you can't shoot another arrow until the arrow you just shot lands on something, whether it's an enemy or hopefully not the wall.
Could not have said that any better myself, and it looks like DRock is the first one going to be out of this dungeon, I think, or was it? Yeah, it's going to be DRock, first one out of desert. Beautifully done. Had a really nice Lammo fight there.
Muttski made up a lot of time on that fight. That's definitely easily one of the bosses that it looks so simple, but it requires probably one of the most It's probably one of the bosses that requires the most practice to get down efficiently. And learning how to react.
Yeah, there's a lot of adjustments you got to make, and the most important thing to learn is the emergent sprite, that little ground movement, trying to time the little dancing white pixel, and then know exactly when the worm is going to emerge. That way you can get more arrow shots in.
And then what we just saw on all 4 runners screens right now, it's the fake flipper glitch. Let's just swim without the flippers. What has to happen is you have to land in the water and then exactly 1 frame later do a screen transition, and that effectively lets us take a little 8-second time saver to get up here so we can travel up Death Mountain. It does come with a little bit of a catch though. If you get hit while in the water without the flippers, the game gets kind of confused. It doesn't know where to send you. It'll scroll a little bit and then it'll finally place you. But if you accidentally move after that, it'll put you into an infinite scroll lock. All 4 runners did a great job avoiding that. And right now we're saving an old man so we can get a mirror.
All right, so it looks like DRock took a little bit of overworld damage on the approach to Death Mountain. Death Mountain is pretty notorious for being trolly. Not only are we trying to get up here really quick with spin speed, but the boulders here, as some of us call them, cabbages, can just be really unruly and really wreak havoc on our runners. So as DRock and Muttski have found out, these cabbages are not in their favor today. Looking good for Parisian and Emma here, getting through the Light World Death Mountain unscathed, and that'll set them up really nicely for Hera. DRock definitely needs to be careful here.
Yeah, because he will be taking one intentional hit from his own bomb. Then other than that, we'll talk about that boss in a little bit. Didn't get it quite dizzy dash off there. Sometimes physics and geometry doesn't work out very well for us. Okay, so while we're going through this little glorified cutscene called the Tile Room, we'll talk about. I guess we'll go ahead and talk about the rupee route a little bit. Whenever you pull select trees, some rupees will come out of it, and what comes out of it depends on how many enemies you have killed beforehand. Since between the last time you pulled a tree, if you kill less than 4 enemies, it'll always drop 4 green rupees. If you kill 4 enemies and then take a hit, you'll get blue rupees, 4 of them. And then kill 4 enemies and not get hit at all, you'll get 4 red rupees. If you don't pick up any spare rupees along the way there to this rupee route, you'll get 20 from the blue rupees and 100 from the red rupees. At minimum, the runners definitely want 5 rupees before this point, since there's a free 5 rupee drop in Hyrule Castle. And this leads us to the first bomb jump of the game. If you're not, you need to be 2 pixels away from the edge, and then if you have the bomb that's underneath you, it'll blast you over a two tile gap. There's a little bit of a technique. If you do bonk against the wall right before it goes off, it extends that window to 2 pixels.
Alright, so the boss we'll be coming up on here is Moldorm, sometimes known as Trolldorm, but most likely what we're trying to do is we're not wanting to fall down at all. The big problem with this boss is if you get knocked down, specifically if you get knocked down the middle hole, you're going to go down a couple of levels, but most importantly is it's going to reset the boss's health. You can see what DRock was doing there. He was having his sword out and pushing away from the edge towards the boss, which allowed him to not get knocked off. It's a technique that is taught early on. It's highly suggested for beginners to utilize this strat, but in a lot of cases, you'll often see advanced runners utilize this strat, especially if you're trying to go for anything on that left side of the middle hole. But all of our runners getting out of here without a problem. Children being awfully nice to our runners, and we're heading off to go collect the Master Sword.
Yeah, but Muttski did get bonked around quite a bit in that fight. He managed to not fall like 3 times and got knocked around quite a bit. And he did a great job just recovering after all of that. Yeah,
the other aspect of Trolldorm is that that boss can definitely just kind of sit on the left side of that middle hole. You can kind of get around it utilizing some spins, but when Moldorm is moving that fast, utilizing some spins can also just set you up for a disaster, because Link does not move, but still can get hit while waiting for that spin animation to finish. So looking like all of our runners here are set up quite nicely to get their 80 rupee drop coming up from this tree.
Yep, and the great thing about Master Sword right now is it gives us some sword beams. As long as they don't get hit before entering Hyrule Castle, it's gonna set up a strat that we won't see the full result of until much later into the game, like another 30 minutes.
Yeah, the great thing about having sword beams is that it's going to make Aghanim Tower much faster, and a lot of the strategies that we're going to be trying to utilize kind of rely on having sword beams for added safety. And of course, speed. All of our runners have a really healthy arrow count too. Most of them in the 10s, Muttski at the 7 though. So you might be looking at DRock's rupee count and saying, okay, he's only got 108 rupees, but he needs at least 110 coming up into Kiki, so that way he can get into Palace of Darkness. Well, there's something really nice about that. A lot of the strategies that we're doing here are going to put him in the path of at least 6 rupees, so he's more than safe.
Oh yeah. Alright, so what all the runners are doing in this room with the 2 guards right here, it doesn't look like much. You're just doing 2 sword beams and then dashing through the enemies. But that sets something up much later into this game. First key point is whenever you kill an enemy with a dash, it will never drop an item. And then this is incredibly important. Those 2 guards, they're part of a prize pack, the only prize pack that has fairies in them. It's the second slot in this prize pack of 8. It always goes through a cycle that's the same every single time. And then the only other enemies that we kill within the run that can drop a fairy are the little Helmosaurs and then much later on the Pokies. So by killing those 2 guards with the dash, that's setting them up so they can get a fairy drop within Turtle Rock.
Yeah, sometimes you may lose your sword beams. You can still kind of maintain it by doing a couple of dashes in that room. It looks awkward, and it's a little bit timing effective too. You need to make sure that you dash far enough, and also recharge your dash once again in order to kill those guys with dashes. Dashes do not advance the prize pack at all, so that's why they try to do that. Unfortunately, sometimes you may have to just kill them outright with slashes, and so you might see the heart drop or even the fairy drop from either one of them, which means that the aforementioned little mini Helmosaur in the Palace of Darkness that you're going to most likely kill with the pot while you're trying to set up the Hamayump could have a 50% chance of dropping that fairy for you and thus losing your prize pack later on. So time for another RNG boss fight. We got a fight with Aghanim 1 here. So the first shot out of every round is always going to be a yellow orb, and then the remaining 3 before the lightning bolt have a 50% chance of being either blue balls or a yellow orb. We don't want blue balls, as they're going to put our runners farther behind each other, as they are so close right now.
I think all 4 runners are at 1 blue ball. 2 for DRock, 2 for Parisian. Ideally, we'd like to see less than 3 in a fight. So every fifth attack is a lightning cycle. If we get 0 blue balls or up to 2 blue balls, we'll be able to kill them with only 1 lightning cycle.
Another thing that some of our runners are trying to do here is they're trying to knock Aghanim into the center of the room. It saves a couple of frames while he's trying to teleport across the room.
Alright, first kill from Emma, followed closely by Muttski. Breezing a little bit, and then pretty soon DRock.
Yeah, I think DRock's only got one more orb hit left.
And there we go.
So yeah, just a couple of seconds. I think roughly about like 30 seconds behind Muttski right now. Still an insanely close race, not only between the two runners individually, but also just overall these four runners.
Yep, and then these last 30 minutes, this was warm up. As soon as we enter Dark World, we start adding in a pretty difficult trick, and then an especially difficult boss if RNG does not cooperate.
Yeah, a lot of goals is just trying to get out of Light World. Dark World has a higher difficulty, but it's overall more fun. There's more strategies, there's more things you can do, and I definitely enjoy getting to Dark World and actually completing a run more so than just resetting in Light World.
Minor optimization to open up the Palace of Darkness door is right before you finish that dash and hit that trigger, you want to do a quick turnaround so that Kiki tries to whip around Link really fast before he gets frozen into place with that cutscene and then does that slow little crawl up to that button. Oh no, DRock did get hit, so he's trying to farm for 5 rupees now, or 6 rupees right now.
Yeah, if you hit an enemy and stun them with the boomerang and then defeat them, they will always drop 1 rupee. He's also trying to be careful to preserve his prize pack here by not outright killing the little Dark World rope popos, because they also will advance the prize pack that he's trying to hope to keep all the way into T-Rock.
Yep, so he opts for a pretty good backup if you don't have enough rupees.
DRock getting rich behind Sahasrahla.
So, Palace of Darkness, we see lots of uses of mirrors each time. This dungeon alone is where we get a majority of the bombs that we need for the rest of the run, actually. And every time that we mirror, it resets not only the enemies, it also resets the prizes underneath each pot. And so, throughout this dungeon, we get, let's see, don't remember the count offhand, but almost enough to last the rest of the run.
Yeah, all of our runners, if their bomb jumps and their bomb usage all are used correctly, they will not really have to pick up any other bombs for the remainder of the run.
And then we saw this on Muttski started running the Emma trying to set up the hammer jump. You have to, it's a double pixel perfect trick. As far as Y position, you have to be at a specific Y pixel and then drop a bomb to the right of Link, and then you have to find yourself to the second Y pixel. That way it boosts Link straight left. And then there's some weird properties whenever there's a rail next to a hole like that, so you can just kind of walk right through it. Then Emma gets it her second time. And right before this final mimic room, there's a free 3 hearts right there. You really want sword beams coming to this room that Muttski is in right now. That way, you can use beams to hit that crystal switch and save 2 item swaps.
DRock getting himself a really nice hammer jump there.
Alright, so Helmasaur King. We need 17 hammers to the face, to his mask, to break it off completely. The biggest sources of RNG is going to be whether or not he's going to be shooting the fireball or do his spin. When he has the mask on, he can only do one of those 2 at a time. Now that the mask is off on Muttski's side, Helmasaur King can do all attacks at the exact same time, and if you see that fireball as he's getting ready to swing his tail, you have a really small window in order to avoid getting hit there. Every time you get hit from Helmasaur King from any attack is 2 hearts of damage. Getting that same card that we got at the very beginning of the game, if you go in at full hearts, that lets you get hit 3 times safely before you die, as opposed to skipping it and you only have 2 safety hits. Okay, pretty clean fights from Parisian, Muttski, and Emma. And then we'll see DRock fighting Helmasaur pretty soon, and so we'll see how that fight goes.
Really nice shuttle room there from DRock. So Muttski is the first one out of Palace of Darkness and begins the longest overworld segment that we have going on here. So he's got to do a little bit of fetching. He's got to get himself a shovel, then a flute, activate the flute, and then he'll be on his way towards Thieves Town. Now, Thieves Town is in the order of dungeons, the 4th dungeon, but there's really nothing that we don't have that means that we can't complete this dungeon. So we're going to go ahead and do that dungeon in order for us to get the Titan's Mitt, which will allow us to upgrade our sword much sooner in the run as you would normally. Other benefits of doing that is it's going to put us in a position where we can get 600 rupees to line us up to go to Zora to get the finger webs, and it's going to put us really close to yet another dungeon, Skull Woods.
Yes, like that's the beautiful thing about the route for this category. It's like you basically get everything just as we need them, and then conveniently that puts us right next to where we need to go anyways. Alright, shoutouts for first try dig for Muttski. And then this beam speed coming up from on Muttski's side is fairly important to avoid damage and be able to get through this screen effectively. That red guard there, he's pretty fast. You have a fairly small window, not ultra tight, but tight enough that you don't want to have too much of a movement error in that screen.
So what you saw from our runners here is they're activating the flute to the left of the west signal. What that's going to do is it's going to allow us to move much sooner, because as soon as the magical duck, is released, there's an animation, and then we want it off screen to save a couple of frames. So that's why they try to go as far left as possible and still activate the flute.
And once you start using the flute, you're going to start noticing them move in such a way to try to minimize how much screen time the bird does have before you fly away. Okay, Thieves Town. First little part right here, it's a bit of a maze. The only thing of importance here is we do need the big key it's in the first room of the game, but we don't have any access other than to go this way.
So let's talk a little bit about Thieves Town here. Thieves Town is, it's not too dangerous a dungeon. A lot of the enemies here are going to do 2 hearts of damage to you, but they are also kind of slow moving and easy to dodge. Really the ones that we're going to be looking out for are the red horse heads. Not only do they do 2 hearts of damage, but they also shoot fireballs. You're going to probably see most of them being avoided as well as eliminated if they are in our way.
Oh, well, he's beating up Muttski a little bit.
Yeah, there is a very beneficial pixel that we can kind of land on there. But even if you do land on that pixel, if the RNG in the room is not in your favor, as Parisian Player just found out, unfortunately, you can still get halted. Petrostar is really giving Parisian a problem here. Ooh, Emma also got the pixel, but had much better recovery to get through that room.
Yeah, they didn't stay in her way when after that. Patrick Star knocked her out. So far we're 3 out of 3 of Hellboy not playing nice. Alright, so we make a quick little detour here. We need to grab a key so we can open the door so we can get our mitts. We find our maiden. Hope she plays nice with us. DRock didn't get the pixel in the hallway, but RNG played pretty nice, so he was able to adjust and make it through unscathed.
Muttski's screen, we got Blind coming up here. So Blind is it's normally a pretty daunting fight, but we found a way to make it almost scripted. What we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of pokes here at the top, and then set up for a second position on the right side here. Get 3 more pokes in, and then that will make sure that Blind always goes to the left. Unfortunately, Muttski missed one of the hits, and so although getting to this phase is much safer than trying to go it from like below or from any other direction. So if you can manage to practice and get at least the 2 phases down, the fight is pretty trivial. Parisian Player gets a really good setup here for phase 2. Emma's looking good for phase 1. Ooh.
Still a fairly clean fight, didn't let it get too far out of hand.
Yeah, something that can happen is during the second phase, if you're a little bit too quick with your pokes or slashes, the hit won't register because the boss still has kind of like the damage frames that you have to kind of wait for. So sometimes being too quick can also be against your favor.
Okay, so Muttski starts this little shopping trip and getting some money. One side effect of grabbing that blue boomerang much earlier in the game, it turns this chest into 300 rupees. If we had skipped that blue boomerang, we would have gotten the red boomerang instead. And other 300 rupee spots are a little bit out of the way.
Yeah, you really only will see that red boomerang there during a 100% run, as you only need the maximum upgrade of something to be considered 100% in this game. For more information on that, there is a really nice guide done by K-Rob on the speedgaming.com resource guides. Definitely check that out if you are interested in 100% or other categories. You can check them out at that location as well. I believe Muttski is setting up the fence dash here. Oh, second try didn't get it.
Yes, like the pixel window to get that fence dash is pretty tight. I find that if you're moving left for exactly 1 frame, you'll be able to get that fence dash every time. Alright, Skullwoods. It's one of the larger early Dark World dungeons in the game. There's a lot of paths that lead to nowhere, but there's just a few convenient keys that we need to grab. First, we need the big key so we can get our fire rod, and then every other key is underneath the pot or inside an enemy.
Yeah, the runners here will make quick work of this dungeon. The main problem with this dungeon is the Gibdos here that Emma's having a little bit of trouble with, but more importantly is also the Wall Master. If you get grabbed, and you can get grabbed even when you're falling down a hole in the 1.0 version of this game, which is what we were using to do the No Major Glitches speedrun. Not to say that you can't do it in the US version, you just get a lot of access to some really nice minor glitches. But it will always reset you back to a specific dungeon entrance that you came in from. So if you get grabbed in where Muttski was, or in like the beginning of like the second or third half of this dungeon, it resets all your progress. Muttski making clean work here of Mummy Hellway. Same thing with Parisian Player.
Kipto is kind of blocking Emma a little bit. I think that first turret's already reset. Not quite.
All right, so Mothula. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to dash up into that first block, and if you're lucky, you can get a double hit on it, and then that makes the fight go much quicker. But unfortunately, Mothula likes to move around this room, in addition to the spikes moving and the floor moving. What they did is they made it so that way these spikes that normally do the same amount of damage as a gold sword not damage Mothula at all. So if you knock Mothula into these spikes, it's the same as not doing any damage at all.
Yep, easily makes the fight either ultra fast or can be pretty drawn out.
Yeah, Emma got a really nice moth fight there. Muttski had a little bit of trouble, but she's closing in on her opponent, Parisian player, right now. We're about to see DRock coming in on this fight and seeing how he handles it.
DRock almost fallen at the end of a really clean of an otherwise really clean mummy hellway. He did one of the pretty much the hardest strat right there.
Ooh, and we're seeing the unfortunate of having sword beams in that room. The sword beams are hitting the Gibdo first and before the sword slashes, so it's only doing 1 point of damage there.
Yep, next up on our shopping trip for Muttski, we need Quake so we can get into Turtle Rock later on, which is conveniently next to the flippers. If you mirror over to the Dark World.
So for the runners that are still hopeful for their prize pack, they're going to be dashing through these little guys right here. Unfortunately, Emma taking a hit right there, but there's a couple of hearts that are going to be in her way if she's lucky. There's a bush coming up here, and then there's also the little crab monsters that she can defeat in hopes of getting a heart. It's not necessary to have sword beams for Ice Palace, although it does make a couple of rooms much nicer.
Yep, and then that little bonk right before getting the Quake, it does set them up for a quick warp. It saves 30 frames, right around 30 frames, if you have the X position of the camera lined up at the right spot. Yep, and another great thing about the flipper location is there's a whirlpool right here, which is conveniently right outside Ice Palace. Do take note that this is Dungeon 5. The big chest item in here is the blue mail. So it's a bit out of the way to be able to get the big key in order to get that. There is a bomb jump in this dungeon that is pretty critical. It's you basically skip like half the traveling in this dungeon. The game intends you to basically make 2 full loops throughout this dungeon, so you can get the switches set up, so you can push a block on top of another button.
The best thing about this dungeon and the way that we're going to go through is that we're going to be cutting out 50% of the dungeon trekking that we're going to have to do with the use of a bomb jump. This is probably one of the more notorious bomb jumps. Some find it very difficult, some find it very easy. There's a lot of different ways to kind of set it up and get through it. we may even see some people hover it if things go incredibly awry. Nice move there from Parisian. He is over.
Yep, so how that bomb jump works, when you enter the room, there are 3 X pixels that work for it pretty well, and 2 Y pixels. The Y pixel you can easily get for dropping the bomb just by holding left as you enter that room. And then you need to be facing right, and then after you drop that bomb, you need to be at a specific pixel in relation to that bomb. So it lets you, one, clear those pegs on the right, or right underneath Link, as well as still give you enough of a boost to make it past that gap. The only other crystal switch in this dungeon is one room to the right of where Muttski is. The game wants you to hit that switch, go upstairs, make a long loop around the dungeon, and then come back so you can push that block and open that door. One of the pups got away from Parisian, but that's pretty fine. So we need, and then this dungeon is also, you have to be really conservative about your fire rod shots, because you do need full magic coming into this fight so you can destroy that shell from Cold Stare.
Yeah, not just that, but this boss is very dangerous. You're supposed to have the key item from this dungeon, which is the blue mail, which would cut Cold Stare's damage down from 4 to 2. Unfortunately, with the green mail, with health like what Emma has, it's fatal to get hit with pretty much any of the pups, and the icicles that fall from the ceiling do 2 hearts of damage also, so you can still die from a icicle dropping on you even after you've defeated the boss while you're waiting for it to blow up. Luckily, 3 of our runners are past it. DRock is coming up on it right now. Let's see how he handles it.
Very clean fight. Yeah, the last thing you ever want to see in this run is a death to Cold Stare. Because you'll either want to finish another dungeon and then come back later, or hope you get lucky on magic drops from enemies outside.
So post-ice, we can see some route differences between runners. Some choose to go for ether and also for the ice rod. Some will just choose to go straight to swamp, and then we'll do their collections post swamp. Either of them is good. There's really not too much that you'll gain across your opponent by waiting another dungeon. Outside of the ability of having spin speed much sooner, or much easier I should say, with using the item dash with the hookshot. You'll also have a faster stair climb with the hookshot too. So you have a little bit of an advantage, but it's not like a huge, 3-4 second gain across your opponent. It's just more or less reacting with what you got and what you have. So having one bomb after you leave Ice Palace, it's generally safer to do your collections here, as you can pick up the other bombs that you need on your way as you finish up Swamp Palace and be lined up to do Mire.
Yeah, but then another big advantage of the route of the collection route Parisian, Emma and Muttski did is the next dungeon Mire is pretty health intensive. There's a lot of intentional damage boosting and iframe abuse throughout that dungeon, and by doing especially ether first, that gets rid of the RNG from the boulders to take away from the health for that dungeon. And Swamp Palace, it's a fairly safe dungeon. We're finally entering dungeon 2. We've finished 4 other dungeons, so we've got a lot more hearts than that were intended to have, and we also have a tempered sword. So basically, every enemy is gonna die in 1 slash. So just a little bit reacting to the different enemy patterns that you see, just so you don't just lose little pieces of time everywhere.
So the dungeon that we're in right now is Swamp Palace. This is normally the second dungeon in the way that you'll be doing things, but coming here with the Master Sword is not ideal. There's a lot of things here that won't die to just 1 slash, and the boss is dealt with a lot slower with the Master Sword. Plus, you will only have around 7 hearts. So coming here, oh, no, not 7, 8 hearts, I think. So you'll have a little bit there. What you're going to be wanting to look for here is perhaps some of our runners will be utilizing some quick strategies on Argus, but overall, having a tempered sword here and more health makes this dungeon really safe. There's also a lot of enemies here that'll just ping away at your health. It just all depends on your movement, how well you adjust, and the fact that the water that you're walking on will also slow your movement.
Alright, so with a lot of digging deep into the swamp and a lot of backtracking, we finally get our hook shot. Main advantage of hook shot is well, let's just skip over gaps like that, but it's also used for a lot of safer strats. It's like whenever that hook shot is out, you are completely invulnerable to any type of attack. So we like to use the hook shot a lot just to avoid damage whenever we can.
It's also a very useful weapon. It can kill some enemies outright, like these jellies, and it allows you to kill them at a range. It also can stun some enemies out of your way, so it's a very useful weapon that we get to utilize, and it's a shame that we only get it so late, as there's a lot of usages for it.
Alright, DRock is off doing, well, started trying to go for the 0 sec a little bit. So if you enter that room, you'll be entering with the dash every single time. If you keep the sword out and do a hook dash with that, it's basically going to do the same thing as slash damage every single time on those puffs. It is a pretty tight window in order to keep that going, but since you're on that glitch state, he did have to dash a little bit so we can break that state again.
Parisian was trying to go for the 2 fire rod and 1 spin. That is the quick kill. That one's a little bit easier to pull off as you can get into a good placement with Argus and then get yourself in that position. It saves more time and is a lot easier to do than trying to do a spin, wait for Argus to jump back up and jump back down.
Okay, all 4 runs I made it through Swamp House fairly cleanly. At this point, DRock is going to be making his last little field trip to grab some items, since you have to come straight to Swamp Palace.
Ooh, we're going to see not 1 but 2 sword climbs here from DRock.
Oh yeah, so rather than seeing a bunch of 0 frames and a lot of slower framing, we get to see a much faster climb through that. And DRock makes it through Death Mountain without getting a single hit. It's pretty important to be at really high hearts entering Mire, and then the fastest strat for the second room of Mire does require sword beams.
It is possible to still get the fast strat with the fire rod. It just really, it takes a lot of precise and really quick fire rod shots. It's much more difficult.
Yeah, but then the most important thing is making sure you get rid of those whiz rubs before they disappear that first time.
So over the course of the run, I would say that Mire is probably one of the most dangerous dungeons to do without powder. This is also a dungeon that is something that people always say is something that the reason why they won't drop powder or have yet to drop powders because they're not comfortable with their Mires. Reasoning because is you're going to be taking some damage here. You're going to take about 3 hearts of damage. That'll leave you with about 8 hearts left, which is more than enough that you need in order to do the quick strats with Vitreous. But it really depends on how you handle and dodge the enemies in these rooms, and also the RNG and how you kind of respond to it in the actual fight. So these torches that M is at, this is a kind of a milestone or a checkpoint that runners look at. If you're having a consistent run, you can generally think about 20 minutes from now, you're going to be entering that Triforce room. So it kind of gives you like a rough estimate or a live estimate of how your run is going and what kind of a pace that you are on.
A quick little I'm swapping optimization on Parisian's part, so. And then another big advantage of not having powder at all or even mushroom. So whenever you use your last bomb, it's going to switch you to the next item to the right, and it wraps around to the next row if there's nothing there. So then just puts the runners straight to fire rod, so they don't have to walk on over to that crystal switch. And then that fire rod is just one away from the arrow, the bow and arrow they're going to be switching to for the last part of the Vitreous fight. So Vitreous, the small little eyeballs, they do 4 hearts of damage to you. You definitely don't want to get hit by them. But the slime that surrounds Vitreous, it only does 1 heart of damage. So iframes are used so we can just get in between all the eyeballs and release a couple spins, and so we can quickly and efficiently get through that first little phase. So the big eyeball of Vitreous will hop on out, so we can shoot it with the 8 arrows, and he's gone.
I also want to point out that beautiful zero cycle from Parisian Player. That's not easy to pull off. It really depends on the RNG of the eyeballs and how quick you are at getting your sword out and charging your sword.
Uh-oh, I just gotta play it really safe. The lightning that comes out of Vitreous Eye, it can be RNG. On some funky RNGs, it can come all the way out to that wall and hit someone. Oh no!
That is most unfortunate. We got DRock coming up here on the Vitreous fight. He's actually a little worse for wear in his health department. He's got more than enough that he needs for the boss, but he needs to be really precise.
All right, making it
Okay,
through.
looks like he's gonna make it through safely.
Yeah, it's always a bit scary, at least how I view it. It's like if it's one of the left eyeballs that survive the spins, since you have to make your way over across, and it's right around the same time that Vitreous is going to be shooting that lightning.
Yeah, the left ones will usually survive if you don't end up going deep enough with your first and second spins. Although I have to say, for Emma's sake here, while she did die to Vitreous, she didn't spend any arrows. So she's still got a healthy arrow count to clean up any of the little eyeballs that she needs to, as well as more than enough for the remainder of her run.
So Turtle Rock, we get to use our newfound cane to kind of travel around through this dungeon. There's a lot of early damage boost for optimal strats that I think all runners are going to be going for coming up right after this room. It's the big reason that we manipulate the prize pack back in Hyrule Castle, so we can try to get a fairy drop. Everything in here is going to do, almost everything in here does 4 hearts of damage.
Yeah, while Meyer is a bit of a gatekeeper for powder, Turtle Rock also has a little bit of that claim to fame as well. The big difference between Meyer and T-Rock is that Meyer does not have a planned, or can have a planned, fairy drop. So We're hoping that we see the fairy drop coming up here for Parisian player in this room. I'll set him up with sword beams for the chain chomp room, which is a little bit faster and easier to execute with without the Cane of Samaria. Very nice. And there's that sword beam strat. It's a little bit faster over dropping the block and using the Cane of Samaria. It saves a little bit of lag frames.
Oh no, we missed another unfriendly encounter with Vitrius on Emma's side. GG to her for keeping it going in. It's one of the more frustrating to deaths you keep seeing happen over and over.
Yeah, the majority of all the Dark World dungeons are all going to be pretty infuriating to die. I think really the only two that are the least detrimental to your time is Blind and Mothula, as you don't really have to traverse the majority of a dungeon to get back to a boss.
Yeah, but then the only exception with the Blind thing is, if you do die to Blind, that refight's a lot scarier than the normal fight, since when you go to the first fight, you set yourself up so you can do that scripted fight, and Blind doesn't form until you're already above him. But on that refight, when you're walking, he's already moving.
Yeah, there's a kind of a recovery strat for if you do end up dying to Blind, where as soon as you enter the room, you just want to end up dashing to the top of the room, like you said, and just kind of like try to salvage whatever main strategy that you could come up with, just so that way you're a little bit safe from the majority of the laser beams and all the head movements.
So far, we're 3 out of 3 on getting that fairy drop where we wanted, I think. Didn't see where Muttski got his.
He also got his in the room before the chain chomps.
And with that third death, Emma does forfeit from the race. It's a really tough. It can be a really tough fight, and then each death that you take just eats away at your demeanor, and your motivation to complete a run.
Parisian just soaring through this dungeon here, gets that laser bridge skip very easily, and is making his way towards Trinex, well ahead of the majority of his other racers. With Emma's forfeit, he does win, so he will be moving on. Ooh, Parisian going for the backdoor strats. This can set up for a really nice one cycle. I think you can't get a 0 cycle. I might be wrong on that, but I think you'll often just get a nice 1 cycle there.
Yes, like doing that backdoor shot just saves a little bit extra, a few extra frames to help you make that window. And that was a really nice fight from Parisian. Muttski missed that. Ice Rod shot. Ice Rod has some funky mechanics sometimes. Sometimes you can swear that you see that Ice Rod shot go right over something and it doesn't connect.
All right, so our Parisian is on his way to G Tower. this is the culmination of all the strategies and all the items that you've have picked up until now. So you're going to see some item switching. You're going to see a lot of really tight movement and a lot of strat like utilization. There's many different ways you can take these rooms, and it's kind of more or less how the RNG throws at you. But really, the big ones that we're going to be looking for is how well ISR is handled, how well your gauntlet is handled, and then how well you are adjusted for whatever RNG that Aghanim 2 is going to give you.
Yep, and then they'll just have one opportunity to grab fairies if they choose to within Ganon's tower. But other than that, basically what you go in with Gauntlet is basically what you're gonna have. You have like 2 or 3 hearts from the start of the Gauntlet to the end of the dungeon to have some fairly convenient heart drops.
Yeah, hopefully you shouldn't be taking any damage in here. There's really no damage boost strats. There's no things going on. Like, really the only damage you're going to be taking is hopefully just about 3 from the second or the first top room after you get the big key. If things get really bad, there is a room that you have to bonk across in order to get to. It is just after the Ganon Ball Z room, which is the big cannonball room.
An important thing to note about Armors 2, so it's basically the same fight as the first one, except we're on ice. More or less the same fight. It is pretty important to have a fairly clean fight. You have a little bit of room for error, but there's a special variable that's set in this fight that manipulates, or it sets what Ganon's fire bats are going to be doing in the second phase of that fight. So there's a little bit less guessing on how you need to react in Ganon.
All right, sorry about the auto dropping. We're in the process of switching audios. But to kind of fill this dead air, I'll do a little bit of conversation about the strategies that we're going to be doing here in this last little bit of the dungeon that Parisian Player is coming up on. So by having a good fortune here, Parisian Player was able to move fast enough and avoid the spikes there. If you're fast enough in that room, there's a really good strategy that you can utilize. Same thing with what he's doing right here is he's intentionally taking a fall. That's going to give him immunity frames to just dash through here. And then we got the gauntlet just shortly after.
5 rooms, we have to kill all the enemies. They start having a little bit more traps each time, a little bit stronger enemies in each room. Second room we had the conveyors. This one we had some spikes in the middle of that, as well as 2 BMOs. And then there's a lot of reacting to where the enemies end up. And then we have nothing but all ice here. And that sets us up gets us ready for Lamo 2. The only real difference in this fight is they add a little fireball shooter right here. But otherwise, a spin in a fire rod shot and 2 fire rod shots on the other ones takes care of the Lamo. They do want to conserve magic a little bit because we need it so we can light some torches later on.
Nice torch puzzle here from Parisian Player. You can actually get that really quickly just by doing it, and you just gotta be a little bit faster and kind of cut that corner. He's dashing all the way over here in hopes of picking up that that magic pot without taking any damage from the lasers. It also gets them activated so he can evade them a little bit easier.
Those guys knocking Muttski out. It's like, there's some random pixel combinations that most of the time, whenever you're dashing your swords out, it will knock enemies out of the way, but there's some random frames and pixels. It's like based on how Link moves around, where your sword's hitbox bypasses the enemy you want to hit, and then instead the enemy hits you instead.
Yeah, I'm also just lucky, or I'm just glad that he didn't get 1.0'd. Not only can you get grabbed when you're like falling down a hole, you still have a position where you can actually get hit, so you can still get damage even though that you're completely out of the way to get hit.
Or heaven forbid, you have an anti-fairy right over that hole too. You'll lose almost half your magic, if in that case. Alright,
yeah, generally that'll happen around when you're trying to drop down to Ice Armos if you're a little bit too slow on the bomb throw.
Alright, so Agnum 2. It's much like the Agnum 1 fight where you have to reflect these energy balls back to hit Agnum. Except he also has two little copies of him that they don't get hit, but they always shoot the energy balls. The main Agnum, he can still do blue balls, but the fight's not as sensitive as it is in Agnum 1. So typically we'll see less than 3 or 4 rounds. Alright, and Parisian enters the Ganon fight. With the Tempered Sword, we need to get 12 tempered slashes worth of damage. So we're going to be fitting in a few spins and try to get double spins so we can make each little cycle fast in time. You have up until Ganon swings his trident the second time. That's the start of another phase. And then after that you have to wait till he finishes that little cycle before he decides if he's going to advance or not. Second phase was the same thing. You needed 12 slashes. Third phase, this is where the time-consuming RNG comes from, because it's 50-50 whether or not you can slash him or he just teleports away.
Yeah, it's 12 slashes for the first 2 phases. Afterwards, it's just going to be 12 spins here in this last phase.
The game expects you to have gold sword and silver arrows at this point. You're supposed to be... The game wants you to slash Ganon before he teleports away, so you stun him and freeze him a little bit, then shoot silver arrows at him. But there's also some coding on here where, like, right before he teleports away, you can land a hit. We do the slashes on 1 for a little bit extra damage, and 2, that the spin just increases the frame window that you have in order to land these hits. And very clean fight from Parisian. And then just in time to catch Muttski on phase 3. DRock's getting ready to start his Ganon fight right now.
Parisian Player finishing with a official Speed Racing TV time of 1:29.28. GG.
Muttski getting quite a few warps. DRock did some interesting movement. You watch like Ganon kind of face the wrong way. I forget the actual cause on that one. Something about being where he wants to be, so he faces the other direction to avoid a random hit. A little bit of help on explaining that would be appreciated.
I'm not qualified enough to talk about that one, unfortunately. I know it has something to do with like how fast that you get that spin off and the positioning, I think, of where Link is and where Ganon is teleporting.
Alright, and DRock does make it into phase 3. The fight is a bit safer once you get to this point.
Ooh, unfortunately, Muttski missed the torch glitch here.
Does switch to Lantern just to make sure he doesn't lose his magic too much. Ideally, you want to be able to get 3 slashes per cycle before the torches go out. It's incredibly tight timing to be able to get that if you don't get the torch glitch. It's barely possible, and there we go, Muttski finishes off Ganon. And we'll go ahead and check out DRock's phase 4. He does get the torch glitch. Then he just has to do a little bit of manipulating on where the bat's going to be, so he can quickly get out of the way and just in time to land the spins.
Muttski is finishing with an official Speed Racing TV time of 1:31.24. So the two racers moving on from here are Muttski from the Muttski versus DRock and Parisian Player versus his opponent Emetatron.
Okay, then DRock will be done pretty soon. There we go, there's that 12th and final spin. A little bit of a fanfare, then he'll walk through the door, and this was still a really great race overall. Within 3 minutes from first place to the final place. And GG to DRock, finishing with an official Speed Racing TV time of 1:32.12. And we are joined with the first place finisher of the entire race, Parisian Player. GG, how'd you feel about that?
Mixed feelings about my run. First, sorry for Emma that she couldn't go through Vitreous. Like I wanted, since we were pretty close racers, I wanted a very close race, and it was the case until, well, I knew she had problems in Ice Plus Bump Jump, but even after that, could have been much closer, and it wasn't the case in the end. So sorry about that for her. Apart from that, so I've got another mid-low 129. I'm currently like making a collection of them, and weird because like in Hera I missed my bomb jump, so I lost my bomb, so I had to grab one. I've got a 6 flat Hera, which is, I was probably one of the worst of the racers with that. I missed a lot of spin speed. My Skullwood, I had a terrible first room in Skullwoods. I lost a lot of time there. Lost a lot of time the Hellway. And somehow I still got a mid 129. And that's a good sign, but I still want to PB at some point. But for a race that was that important, I would have signed right away for such a time at the beginning of the race.
Yeah, you were flying. When I saw you go into T-Rock, I was kind of concentrating on the other runners, but when I look back, you were like late into T-Rock. You were just flying through that dungeon.
I played a lot better after Ice Palace. 3 seconds away from gold in ice. Swamp is swamp, so Swamp was pretty bad. But then Mire was very good, almost gold. Sub 720 is a 719 T-Rock, which is excellent for me. 743 against Hour, which is really okay. Not very happy with my fight. I missed a few triples. but still, the level, my gameplay was a lot better after Ice Palace. I finished Mothula with 2 hearts. I was a bit scared here. I have a lot of trouble recently on Mothula. So I was like, no, come on, don't die there. Yeah, also what happened to Mutt, because I really, well, he's a better player than I am, so I was expecting him to be ahead of me almost the entire time.
I forget exactly which point. I mean, he was ahead for a large majority of that. I forget what specific instance changed that offhand.
I rewatched the race anyway.
I think it kind of started somewhere around Thieves Town. Some of the runners had a little bit of trouble. Blind got away from them, and I think your blind fight was a little bit tighter. And then just you know, you started kind of picking up steam there. You got the Ice Palace bomb jump pretty cleanly. You kind of cleaned up the remainder of what you needed to do. You had really good movement on like Death Mountain when you were going up to get your fetch items and stuff like that. So it's really just kind of like the pace that you were on, and I guess your motivation to kind of stay ahead just really kind of put you in the mood to just keep up that pace and just start, you know, you're just knocking out dungeons really well.
What else about my run? Just yeah, Muttski is there, just arrived in DRock.
Yep. Did you have anything to say about your run really quick though before we talk about them?
Me, no, I think it was okay. I'm just thinking about maybe later, but I already talked enough.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for that. We're joined here with Muttski and DRock. The winner, of course, Muttski. GG on your race.
Thanks, Ninnies. I appreciate it. And thanks for commentating, guys.
So you had some fun with Moldholm, we saw.
I had fun with every boss that wasn't good, which was like all of them, unfortunately. The Moldholm was, yeah, sometimes you just gotta levitate a little bit, you know? It's all good. Break the game, cheat.
Cheat? What?
Yeah, it kind of looked like he was just hanging out over the, I don't know, the edge of there and just kind of allowed me to come back in for I don't know what reason, honestly. I'd have to look at it again, but I know when I saw it, it looked really, really peculiar.
Yeah, Chad was pretty excited about that. They looked at it and they thought that you basically saved your fall with like a last-minute hover.
Nope. Just held the directional pad in the direction of the arena, and I must have been like really close to like the precipice of what registers as a fall on the Moldholm fight and allows me to come back in, I guess. But no, I did not press the A button. No hovering there. I guess it's just so natural that sometimes it happens when I don't even try anymore, you know? It's just all the time.
Some important talking points about your run. I really liked the reattempt at fence dash.
I'm a failure and a fraud.
And then the other thing is you tossed that bird. Tossed that bird right into the lake.
Oh, I could have been ahead by 1 second or 3 minutes. Either way, I was throwing the bird, you know. Nothing was going to save that guy.
You know my position on memes, right?
Oh, of course, dude. Memes before dreams.
No, for me, memes only if they don't lose time. So Swag Balloon in DKC2 is a good meme. Throwing the bird is a bad meme. That's my position on this. Well, for me, that's why you'll never see me go for that.
Dude, I think the more time the memes lose, the better.
However, they might throw off some frame type stuff on RNG so to make sure slugs out of your way in the middle of a mire. So you gotta factor in not getting hit somewhere.
But as far as the race went, I was glad that they allowed us to have this one as the 4-way. DRock, Parisian, and Emma are all like 3 of the probably like somewhere in the 10 people that I've raced the most in the last 2.5 years. So it was awesome to be able to race with people that I've been racing with for ages. DRock's actually the first person that I ever raced Link to the Past with IRL, so it was kind of cool to be able to match up with him again. And obviously we all have very similar skill levels. I don't think there was a single point, in almost like an hour into the run where like anybody couldn't win, or at that 1 hour mark, like pretty much everyone was within a minute of one another, minute and a half, and that's what we want. That's really entertaining to watch. So it was a lot of fun to race with those guys.
Apparently, if I read correctly, or if I remember correctly, we're all in the Aghanim cutscene at the same time, like before fighting Aghanim.
Yeah, it was that close.
Yeah, your light rolled for all 4 runners. I'd say the majority of this entire run was all really close, but your light rolled and stuff like that, a lot of you guys were just kind of sitting there in sync. Sometimes they trade off between different people, but there was a lot of like entering doors at the same time, doing similar strats, and it was cool to kind of see like the different RNG that can happen between each of the rooms.
Yeah, Aghanim's Tower is definitely one of the trickier splits that I think gets overlooked, because the dungeon's not particularly long, but between the dark mazes and the RNGs you can deal with the red guards, and obviously with the Circle of Pots room, like there's a lot that you can really work to optimize. And I'm sure that if you saw us all in the same rooms at the same time, you probably saw 3, if not 4 different strategies being used in all of them, and that's kind of one of the cooler things about the dungeon, I guess. It's fun until you get to Aghanim, and then it's not fun anymore.
How many blue balls did you have, Matt?
I think 3 or 4, 3 maybe.
And yeah, it's 3 for everyone and 7 for DRock.
Yeah.
And then DRock had some unfortunate Kiki mishaps.
Yeah, I read that. That's why also I had the good amount of rupees, but I decided at the triple to take 10 extra rupees just in case of. There's a lot of situations where I did strats where that I wouldn't do in a run, like the 1 pot key in one pot strat in the chain guard in escape, or also I had problems with bombs because of my bomb jumping Hera. So normally I should still be fine in terms of bomb playing normally, but I decided to take an extra bomb in Blast of Darkness because of that.
I didn't get to hear too much from DRock. How do you feel about your run, dude?
Aside from a few things that went a little sideways, wasn't bad. The whole Kiki thing came around the corner, kind of was getting blocked by the Ropa, and got the bad RNG out of the spear guard underneath me. So I tried to kind of thread the needle between the 2 of them, but I got hit. So.
Also,
other than that, it was an absolute blast racing against Muttski, and I'm glad Emma and Parisian were here as well.
I saw a good point from Josh about my route. When to take Ether. Yeah, he said that it's weird that I take Ether here because I'm really bad at spin speed. And it's true, but like the reason is because I want to get to full health before entering Mire. But the more I play, the more I feel like my Mire is good enough so that even if I'm 1 or 2 hearts down, it should be fine. So I might consider at some point going for the Ether and Ice Rod after Swamp and make the hook dash. Death Mountain.
The hook dash is definitely way swaggier, and it's faster. But as far as getting into Mario full health, I definitely understand why people do the cleanup before Swamp as opposed to after Swamp.
But now I'm really confident on my Vitreous. Like if I enter with 6.5 or more, I have almost no problem. Like I have no pressure, and if I have 6 or less, like I know what to do, and basically up to let's say 4.5, I'm pretty confident about what's going to happen. You're asking for when is Ether and Skullwood come back? Yeah. I still think that many runners should, like players in the 140s, should take Ether for Skullwoods. I did that until I was a 131, I think. And using Ether in the first room of Skullwoods because that room is so bad.
Yeah, especially if they get stuck in that statue. It's like, it's just that weird property where they're hugging that statue, you can't slash him for whatever reason.
So does anybody have any closing statements before I start to talk about what's coming up on the speed gaming channels for Link to the Past coming up here?
I just want to say that I came awfully close to getting a mapless run. I was so trying to prove Screamo wrong, but if you took the over, congratulations, you won. The first map was in Ganon's Tower.
That's awesome. For those of you that don't know, DRock is notorious, like the B.I.G., the notorious MAP. That is DRock, right? Every time.
Yes, I did. I had a map in Ganon's Tower, Screamo.
That's definitely something he would normally not miss if it happened. But we had a lot of action going on at the same time. It was hard to keep up with you all.
I'm playing Gerdo next round should be pretty bad, and so I'm probably gonna mess up DRock's prediction because he said I was going to semifinals, which is not gonna happen because Gerdo is a very strong player. So I'm gonna have fun that match, but next match is probably my last one from the tournament.
M-Chan predicted me to win 2 matches, and I would rather let down my own mother than let down M-Chan, so I'm gonna try my hardest to make that kid's dreams come true. Shout outs to M-Chan, my boy.
The MC
Okay, with that said, we do have Emosar versus DK Luti 24 coming up in just a few minutes on this channel. So make sure you stick around for that.
Oh yeah, and we got a nice handful of races coming up for you tomorrow. The majority of them are going to be on Speed Gaming 3. We got 2 4-ways, one of them against MC Han, or M-Chan, versus Christos Owen, and B-Lytics versus Zarby. And then a little bit after that will be Gregory versus Oh Hates David, and JC87, my co-commentator here, versus Joe D'Amelio.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.